Welcome to Signature Required. It is intended for Tennesseans by Tennesseans. The heart of a Tennessean, the volunteer state, is serve, and we do so largely without self-promotion.
And these are genuine people that get up every day and want to make art, or want to educate the nations, or want to have a heart of love in a way that makes a difference.
Learn from 50 years of experience, take a nugget away, and then go share it with a friend. Mayor Glenn Jacobs, welcome to Signature Required.
Thank you for having me.
You are the mayor of Knox County, which is distinct from the mayor of Knoxville, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, the city and the county are two distinct political entities. The city is in the county, but the governments are separate.
So we have a lot that we want to ask you about, learning about what a mayor does, what unique things about Knox County and Knoxville that you get to experience. But before we go into any of that, you have probably the most unique backstory of maybe anybody that we've had on the podcast. So why don't you roll it back just a little bit? Tell us where you're from and some of your journey. But you know what I'm talking about in your backstory, so get us there too.
Sure. Yeah, so I was born in Madrid, Spain, actually. My dad was in the Air Force at the time. He's 21 years in the military. Grew up in very rural Northeast Missouri. Always wanted to play professional sports ever since I was a little kid. I was playing college football. I went to a smaller school, it's Truman State University. Looked like I might have the opportunity to play in the NFL. And then practice one day, I blew my knee out. I hurt my ACL and meniscus and cartilage in my left knee. Pretty much the end of my football career or any dreams I had of being in professional sports. But, you know, the neat thing about life is often opportunities kind of pop up, and that's what happened with me. One night I was watching professional wrestling on TV with a friend of mine, and it kind of checked all the boxes as far as it was still a performance, and it combined drama with athletic endeavors. My degree's in English, so both of those things appealed to me. So yeah, I ended up being incredibly blessed and very successful in professional wrestling. Folks might know me as Kane. I'm in the WWE Hall of Fame. Spent about 25 years in WWE, got to travel the world, and just have had a fantastic life because of that, the opportunities that afforded me.
Most people are listening, some are watching, but usually when I walk up to somebody, I'm, 6'3", decently tall, but I'm telling you, I have to look all the way up when I look. Like, how tall are you? You get asked this. You are a mountain of a human being.
Yeah, I'm about 6'8", and at my peak, I weighed about 320 pounds. I'm not that now, but I'm still a pretty big guy.
It's amazing. It is. So let's go into the WWE, because this is an interesting dynamic. How old were you when you said you saw WWE and it sparked the curiosity of like, maybe I could do that? Was that after the injury?
Yes. That was actually, I graduated from college. I went to the Chicago Bears training camp, their rookie mini camp, but I couldn't pass the physical because of my knee. So basically, I was just kind of floating through life. My degree, as I said, it's in English. I was going to become a teacher, so I was doing some substitute teaching and that sort of thing. I worked at a group home for folks with special needs, was a personal trainer for a little while, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do with life, and I guess I was about 24 when all of that happened. And again, it's just amazing to me when I think about that, the fact that my life was, this is always how I wanted it to go. And it happened just in a very different manner in which I planned for it to happen, So I've been incredibly blessed with those opportunities.
Now, there might be some people listening that aren't overly familiar with the WWE.
Sure.
And so I have to ask, because I don't know this, do you get to pick your character? Like, did you come ready with like costume drawings, or do they work with you? How did that come about?
It really depends. In my case, it was their idea. I had a couple characters which were not very good leading into the Kane character. It's a lot like movies and TV. In some cases they see you and they have an idea. In other cases, they already have an idea and then they think that you might fit into that. The first couple were kind of the latter, where they had an idea, which just didn't work for me. It's just, again, like in movies and TV, you have to be able to get in the character in order. There has to be something about it that you can relate to in order to make it successful. Otherwise, people see right through that. I think that's even more so in wrestling because since it's live and since there's so much fan interaction, that becomes even more prominent than in the other live mediums such as TV and even maybe stage. But yeah, so it's really a combination. It really depends.
So we're going to go on from WWE after this, but I have one more question that I just would be interested in your perspective on. So there's some households that view WWE to say, we're not going to have wrestling on in the household. And then there's other households where you can see that WWE is a part of the family experience. Like you see the live event and it is a family dynamic that brings a family together. How do you think about how WWE has evolved from the 80s to where it is today? Like, I just wonder, is WWE for everybody? How do you navigate and think about that?
Yeah, I don't know if anything's for everybody.
Yeah.
But as far as being mainstream, yes, it's much more mainstream than it was. You know, Hulk Hogan, unfortunately, just passed away a few weeks ago, and he was one of the people that was really responsible for that. You know, before it was very niche entertainment, and it is much more mainstream now. In the 80s, you saw the crossover with MTV. And really what happened is I think you had an expanded fan base that now you see parents introducing their kids to it.
Yeah.
I'll never forget a few years ago, it's more than a few at this point, I guess 15 years ago or so, I got to ring the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. And it was like the coolest thing ever because the CEO of the New York Stock Exchange was just all gaga over the wrestlers because he grew up in New York and he remembered watching things when he was a kid and, you know, always been a fan, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, this is the CEO of the New York Stock Exchange, right? But that's true all over the place. I mean, you know, I've met people in politics that are huge, you wouldn't think, you know, but are huge wrestling fans. So it's just like many other forms of entertainment, you know, it crosses, I would say, every demographic at this point, and much more mainstream than it previously was, yes.
Yeah.
So pulling it forward to your journey into politics, how did that happen? Because I could imagine a number of different career pivots out of being Kane in the WWE. Politics is either the most logical or the most illogical one. I can't decide which.
I would say it probably prepared you well for the combat that you were going to face.
Yeah, you know, the reason I got into politics is because I have lived an incredibly blessed life. My family didn't have any money or connections or anything like that. And I found something I was good at and was able to just do incredible things. That to me is the story of the American dream. I mean, I think that people like me really are products of the American dream. And I've always been interested in government and politics, never really thought myself getting into elected office, but just because of the impact that it has in our lives. And as my career was winding down, and we're term limited in Knox County, so Mayor Burchett, who's now Congressman Burchett, was not going to be able to run against. There was an open seat. So I figured I have as good a shot as anybody. And you know, I won the Republican primary by 23 votes out of 40,000. So yeah, huge. You know, of course, I thought I was going to win all along and found out afterwards that I was like the only person that thought that I was going to win. But nevertheless, to me, it's you know, it's Ronald Reagan said that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And I very strongly believe that. And I want to do everything I can to make sure that my kids and my grandkids can be able to do what I've been able to do in their own way and have opportunities like I had in my life. And I think that for all of us, that's the most important thing that we can do, you know, kind of as a society for our kids and our grandkids.
I wonder too, because it does sound like such a pivot. Maybe in your heart, you're still serving people, right? You're still using the gifts that God gave you to serve people, whether you're in the WWE or in politics. But I wonder, entering politics sounds so intimidating to most people, right? What was it when you first got in there? Was it like running into a buzzsaw trying to figure out what to do and where to go? Or how did you even begin that?
I was very fortunate because Mayor Burchett had put together a great team. And as you all know, the secret to the success of any organization is the team, right? And we had a great team. I was not intimidated by being in the public eye because I was already there.
Sure.
And I think that is one thing that a lot of folks aren't used to, that I had an advantage. I mean, I was already there. It didn't bother me. The media is always, it is what it is. So, between those two things, there was a learning curve. I'll be the first to admit that, but my team really helped with that. Had some ideas, just how do you put those into practice and how can you practically implement these things. But overall, it was not, the transition like it wasn't as tumultuous as folks might think that it was.
Yeah. The costuming is quite different.
The costume is, yes. That is very true.
That might be the biggest difference.
I would trade in. I'm a shorts and t-shirt kind of guy. I would trade that in for a suit any day, but it is what it is.
Did you move back to Tennessee, or were you always in Tennessee and Knoxville? Has that always been home? What was some of the footprint?
Yeah. So again, I grew up in Missouri, moved to the East Tennessee area right outside Knoxville, actually, in 1995, and have lived there ever since. Whether it's, we've lived around Knoxville and then finally in Knoxville.
So help explain some of the distinction between being the mayor of Knox County versus the mayor of Knoxville. That'll be pretty technical politics, but maybe some people wouldn't know that there was a distinction between the two.
Sure. And people from other states will ask me, you guys have mayors in our counties? And I think we are a little unique in that respect. You're going to have the equivalent position around the country. Other counties around the country are going to have, they'll either be called a county executive, an executive, sometimes they're called a judge executive, sometimes a county commissioner. They are the only county commissioner. Here in Tennessee, we have a true executive legislative form of government in our counties. So that's why the executive is the mayor. And I'm the equivalent of a city mayor. I make the executive decisions and run the day-to-day operations of Knox County. We do some things in the city, but for the most part, the city is its own entity. What is interesting is counties are actually extensions of the state of Tennessee. So cities operate under a municipal charter, right? They're actually completely different than the counties are. The counties are an extension of the state. So we have certain constitutional responsibilities that we have to fulfill. Cities can kind of pick and choose what they want to do, but it's laid out for what we have to do.
It seems really intimidating coming into being the executive where you have constitutional responsibilities when you're coming in as an outsider and trying to figure out what's right and what's wrong and what's going to get you in jail. I mean, like all sorts of things that you just don't know about. So who came alongside you? Who mentored you to be able to help? Because I would imagine similar to like someone stepping into the CEO role of a company, you may have some familiarity with some aspects of the business, but it's totally different when you are the leader.
Yeah. So as far as the staying out of jail part, that's really common sense. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't exercise that, but I mean, it's literally like you just don't use county stuff which isn't yours, and for the most part, if you exercise common sense, you're okay. On the other side of it, again, that goes back to the team that I had around me. And a willingness to listen to them. Also, when folks think government, they kind of lump everything together. My job is distinctly different than a county commissioner. Their job is just to represent their district, and they vote on stuff and approve things or vote down or whatever. My job is completely different than that.
Yeah, tell us some more on that.
My job is actually, the executive offices, our departments, the day-to-day operations, roads, parks, libraries, the health department, all that falls under me. I'm the one that has to prepare the budget, and commission approves that budget, but, ultimately we're the ones that have to have to make decisions about the priorities for the county. Where are we going to act? Where are we going to spend money? How are we going to, spend our capital dollars? What debt load is, can we comfortably manage and accommodate? All those things are things that fall directly onto my office. So they're very different. And as you said too, the executive is the one that has to actually figure out how to make things work. Right? Your legislature can always say, no, I don't like that. Well, it still might be something we have to figure out how to do. So, if you're a legislator, you can vote no and great, that's fine. Meanwhile, as executive, you're still like, okay, we still have to figure out a way to make something, this has to happen. So they're very different offices. And just because in our case, like if you've been a county commissioner, the mayor is still a bit of a different animal than that.
You in Knox County have a really strategic position. There's a lot of things in your district and nearby that you have to work with and manage, like UT, you've got Oak Ridge nearby. Talk about some of the interesting things you have going on right there.
When it comes to economic development in the innovation-based global economy, I think that we're uniquely placed because of the assets that we have, such as University of Tennessee, the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and TVA as well, Tennessee Valley Authority. All those bring together components that really I would put up there with the Research Triangle as far as when it comes to innovation and technology. The I guess crux of the issue is how do we utilize those? And unfortunately, for many years in East Tennessee, there were a lot of turf wars, and this person didn't go along with this person, and that's my lane. And there's a new generation of leadership who don't see it like that. That realize that what's good for East Tennessee is good for Knox County. What's good for Knox County is good for East Tennessee. So we all work together very well. It's interesting that many of the assets that we have in the Knox County area are not actually in Knox County. So you have the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, which is in Roane County. You have the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which is in Sevier and Blount County. That's the most visited national park in the country. And their visitation is going to go up even more because Southwest Airlines just announced that they're coming to Knoxville. Interestingly enough, the Knoxville Airport is actually in Blount County. So as you can see, for us in East Tennessee, especially as Knox County mayor, it's not only what maybe I directly is directly under my purview, but also all these other entities and people that I have to work with in order to really propel our area forward. It's a little different than maybe some other places where we're kind of the cultural and population hub. But you have all this stuff in other places as well that people might live in Knoxville, but they work at Oak Ridge, and all the visitors that come through to the Smoky Mountains and all those sort of things. And I think that's the key to any organization is your ability to work together in relationships, even with outside entities.
So you said a minute ago the most visited national park in the country. Can you tell me more about that? I
Sure.
would not have gotten that stat.
Yeah, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park will get between 13 and 14 million people a year. So even though Yellowstone is, I guess, considered the gem, it's the Smokies which are the most visited.
Of
And
course it is. That's so
amazing.
classically Tennessee to be like under the radar that people don't know that stat. And everyone's like, oh, we're going to go out west.
Yeah.
It's great. And we're right here.
And part of the reason for that is because of our geographical location in East Tennessee. 60% of the nation's population lives within a day's drive of Knox County. So that gives us a big advantage even there because people don't have to fly and don't have to get on an airplane and fly all the way out west. They can just drive 6 hours down to East Tennessee.
But Southwest is coming.
Southwest is coming. That's a good thing. Yes.
Mayor Jacobs, I want to ask you a little bit about distinctions between state politics and federal politics. But before I do, I want to tell a quick story on you that happened in a moment that you won't realize. You and I separately were at an event in D.C., where it was a group of probably 60 of us, and you were there for one reason. I was just there as a spectator. And we were touring through the Capitol, and we were walking through the halls, and you obviously touring through the Capitol stand out in a big way. And one of the security guards, one of the D.C. police there, noticed you and recognized you as Kane. And you had a lot of people around you and plenty of things to do. And this security guard came up and he wanted to take a photo with you. And you stopped everything that you were doing and you came alongside and talked to this young man. And he took a photo with one of his kind of childhood icons, Kane. And you were so kind to him. You talked to him. And after you walked away, I stayed nearby and I heard him talk to another security guard that was right there about what an incredibly special moment that was for him, and getting to have his icon give him the time of day and just make a really special experience. And those moments where you never know that somebody's watching, I saw you and it taught me so much about your character. Because those DC police see a lot of people that don't give them the time of day, don't stop and treat them with respect. And so I just wanted to tell you that I saw it.
Well,
And I've never forgot it. And it's one of the real reasons that I've been excited to have you here. And also something that just makes me happy to see character in our elected officials. When no one's looking. And so the lead-in for all of this, though, is there's a lot of need for federal officials, state officials, and big differences between what the responsibilities are. So can you talk a little bit about the times that you get to interact with our federal officials and just some of the distinctions between what you see those job responsibilities as and then your job responsibilities and how that they might interface together?
Sure, that's a great question. Local government is actually where the rubber meets the road. When people think of governmental services, we're the ones that provide those. So I always remind people that despite the fact that you're watching the cable news and seeing so-and-so federal official, that's not the government. That's one level. And unfortunately, this is kind of my soapbox, but a lot of folks forget about that when it comes to local elections, and you see voter drop off is just tremendous, staggering.
It's so low.
From say if there's a big federal election to local elections, but local government has a huge impact on your life as well. But yeah, so we do those things. Many of the stuff that people would think of day to day. Obviously, at the federal level, it's national defense and more big policy stuff that impacts the entire country. Constitutionally, most of the power is actually supposed to reside with the states. I would argue that the federal government has usurped much of that. I'm glad to see that President Trump is doing things to push the power back to the states. I was recently with Secretary of Education Lynn McMahon, and that's what it's all about, is just returning authority over education to the states so you don't have these one-size-fits-all policies coming out of Washington when it comes to education. So they are different, and you think about it, and people ask me all the time, what about this? Well, that's more of a state level. Say, the state actually makes the criminal laws. We don't do that at the local level. We have ordinances and resolutions. We don't actually put into law, for the most part, that you can do this and you can't do that, right? And then of course, just scale is a little different. The state is still involved with infrastructure, but just bigger stuff, like the interstates and the state highways. What happens usually is the federal government is not directly involved with that. They spend money, they give money to the states, and then the states will work with us on things as well. But, it's really the states that are responsible for that infrastructure. They do get federal money, but ultimately they're responsible for that. So in that respect, there is some coordination, though, because you see, money coming from different areas that ultimately, I'm coordinating with, whether it's the state, whether it's our regional transportation planning organization, which works with both the federal government and the state, to make those decisions about how to utilize that money. Does that make sense?
It makes good sense. And just learning those dynamics, it's similar, just again, to compare it to the business world of trying to understand who stays in what lane. And so in that same way for Governor Lee, is Governor Lee someone that you're like, Spencer, I'm talking to Governor Lee like every other day, we're closely working together and we have to coordinate together? Or is it more like, man, if my phone rings with Governor Lee, I'm stopping everything that I'm doing and I know that something is going down? So what's that dynamic like?
we work. I don't necessarily work with the governor directly on a whole lot of stuff now. We have, and there's special projects coming up that that we're both interested in. We do work together. It's more of our departments working with state departments. Say it's going to be our engineering and public works working with TDOT. That's where those things come in. Now, when it's like budgetary or again like big, just projects that we need the state's help with, like we've done, we can get into it later, some workforce development, economic development, those are the things that we're going to work directly with the state. I've worked with ECD on, personally on just a number of things.
Stuart McWhorter's amazing.
And Stuart's great. Yeah. Stuart's just a wonderful human being. He's done a great, we've had an exceptional run of ECD commissioners. We just have, and that's been to our great benefit. The governor, much like me, he's not going to be in the weeds on a lot of these things, so you only take stuff to him, either to kick things off or to wrap things up, but along the way, you're generally working with the commissioners and the departments.
Mm-hmm.
It really feeds this theory I have about leadership. I love the way you're talking. And I say that leadership is small, and it's because the most impactful leaders take care of the people in their purview, and it's not sexy, and everyone wants to talk about the big elections and the big things, but it's like, if you have the power to be a servant leader in a small area with character, it really is, those are the people that make the impact. And I really appreciate you bringing that to light, because I think in today's verbiage and on TV, it's like everyone's talking about all of the big stuff, and everyone wants to fight about these 120 character headlines. But what people really care about is like, do they have roads? Can I get to work tomorrow? Do I have the economic opportunity? And I know you care a lot about technical training in your district, and you care a lot about career readiness in your district. And I just have to think, that's the generational impact stuff. That's the stuff that, can I buy eggs when eggs go up, and at the federal level, they're fighting about eggs. Can I afford eggs this week? And that's what it sounds like you're doing, and I applaud that. But can you talk a little bit about that training and how much you've worked on that?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that we worked with Governor Lee on. Of course, she's also very committed to career and technical education, especially in skilled trades. And by the way, he's always been great. And any time that we've had something that we've wanted to do, he has an open ear. Obviously, because of budgetary constraints, we can't always do everything.
If money doesn't grow on trees.
No, it doesn't.
I've heard that.
It does
from
not.
my husband regularly, unfortunately.
But the governor is always open-minded about things, and I could not have asked for a better partner since I've been mayor at the state than Governor Lee. So one of the things that we did with the state's help is we have an apprenticeship center now for the skilled trades. It's called the START Center. It's the Skilled Trades Academy and Regional Training Center. We work with a trades association in the building trades, and after work, folks that already have a job come in, get additional training. Eventually, they'll get their NCCER certification, which is kind of like a bachelor's degree of plumbing, electrical, carpentry, or whatever. And then what's really exciting is we're also working with our schools so that right now we have 2 high schools which utilize the space for their CTE training. We have some private schools and home schools that are going to, and we really want to blow that up so that basically we would like to have a skilled trades high school in Knox County, to where the kids could spend half their day going through their academic courses and then come over to the START Center to do the lab and do their training with the construction trades. Right now, for every 5 skilled tradespeople that are leaving the workforce, there's only 1 person there qualified to take their place. So there's tremendous opportunity.
What a stat.
Yeah, it is. It's huge. There's tremendous opportunity in the skilled trades. And you think about it, if you're a young person and you go through our START Center and you get your journeyman's accreditation and everything, you're a plumber, you're making $75,000 a year maybe, with no student debt. So you don't have that hanging over your head. So right now, and that's part of the reason I push the trades, not only do we need them community and society, but the opportunity that's available there for individuals is just amazing currently.
Mm-hmm. When you look back at your time as mayor, your term limited, which I can always imagine is bittersweet, right? I mean, it's part of our Constitution, it's part of the rules, but you always feel like, ugh, there's so much more that I could do. Like if I had a little bit more time. So maybe just talk a little bit about one or two things that you are most proud of that you've been able to do, and one or two things that if Knox County just said, you know what, to heck with the Constitution, we want another term of Mayor Glenn Jacobs, what would you do? What would you counsel the next mayor to do in the future?
I've been really happy because we have not raised property taxes in Knox County. I am a small government conservative. Our budget per person, now you have to adjust these things per person and for inflation to actually get apples to apples. Our budget, our per person spend adjusted for inflation is pretty much where it was 10 years ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. We need some of that over here.
When you factor out schools, now it's gone way up, but the reason is because of inflation, because of people. You know. So, but when you look at the actual apples to apples number, it's pretty steady. Our debt, when you factor out schools in Tennessee, we take on the school's debt. You know, that's just how it works here. But if you factor out schools, when you look at the county's debt, we're actually down about 3% from about 10 years ago. You know, you think about places around the country, you know, that's just not the case. One thing we have to remember about Tennessee is property tax is not indexed to inflation. So people have actually seen their property tax bill go down. If your property tax stays steady, it actually goes down compared to other things. So I'm pretty proud of that. During COVID, I pushed back as hard as I could against so much of the overreach that we saw. I tried to keep businesses open, you know, worked with, you know, just the private sector to relay their concerns with the lockdowns and those sort of things. You know, tried to keep kids in school as much as I had any ability to do so. The Start Center, which is our Skilled Trades Academy, I'm really happy about that. We got the biggest manufacturing economic development project in the county's history, a company called GreenHeck, which manufactures HVAC equipment. They bought a 300-acre business park. When that is said and done, 10 years ago, it's completely built out. It's just going to transform the entire area. And the reason that's so important is because it offers people economic advancement. Right. You're going to have the opportunity to get a good job there, to get a good career. And in that area now, what happens a lot is the kids graduate high school and they have to go someplace else to get a high paying job.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be right there. You know, so we're really excited about that. Now you're talking about term limits and knowing that there's a point where you'll not be in office. What that does is that causes a sense of urgency as well. So yeah, there are some things that I'm like, man, you know, like I was talking about this skilled trades high school. We can kind of get the ball rolling, but I don't know if I'm going to be there, you know, to really follow through on it. The last thing that I want to accomplish in office is we are currently working on plans, and we're going to get this done for a tiny home village for homeless veterans. And what's really cool about it is actually our high school students that are going to be building the homes. So it incorporates the CTE stuff along with a great project and taking care of our veterans and also you know, helping to some extent alleviate some of the homeless issue that we experience like everybody else does. You know, and I don't know if we would have that same sense of urgency if you didn't have the mayor going, I want this done before I get out of office. You know? We do it right, but I want it done. So yeah, there's things that I like to carry on, but at the same point in time, it's also like I have to get this done by this date, and if I don't know if it'll get done or not. So there's kind of a double-edged sword, I guess.
Tell us more about the tiny home village. That's interesting. Who's paying for that? What size?
Yeah,
like,
the wonderful thing about it is really other than our soft costs of just staff time, it's pretty much we're getting donations. D.R. Horton Homes is donating the the building materials, most of that anyway. We're working with other developers and builders on mentorship for the kids, and so that they'll actually get in there and train with them and those sort of things. We have a tract of land that the county owns. We're still doing our environmental surveys, and it's funny because people think because we're government we can just do anything we want. I mean, there's still laws that apply to us, state and federal laws that we have to
back to the not going to jail
exactly.
part
we
of
have to
this
comply.
conversation.
Yeah, we have to comply with, but that'll basically be the county's portion of it. Is just this piece of land which we're not using anyway, and we didn't ever think that we were going to use until we came upon this idea. And schools are very involved with it. But what's really cool, I think, maybe the most rewarding aspect of this job is I get to see our community when it's at its best. When you have a project like this, and a lot of times we have stuff, and I have to go out and beg people to help. I mean, just is the way it is. Then you have something like this where you're like literally begging, well, slow down. Okay, slow down. We'll figure, thanks for the help. We'll figure it out. But that, that's when it becomes really rewarding is you see something that everyone is interested in. And I mean, they just line up to help. And you get to be at the center of that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. That would sound like that's the best part about being in local government is you get to be nimble, right? You're not this behemoth. You get to kind of turn on a dime and see what matters and see how it actually impacts folks.
Yep, that's exactly right. I tell people that all the time. We actually do stuff and we see it come to fruition. And sometimes when things aren't going the way that we want them to go, or we have to do something, we're not so big that we can't change it. It's funny. One of the people that works for me used to work for years ago for a U.S. congressperson, and they're like, man, I love working here because it would take me a month just to get like my business cards changed and approved because you have to go through this entire process, whereas with me, it's like, hey, does this look okay, Mayor? Yeah, good. Go with it. But that's really just, a reflection of the size of what we're dealing with. But yes, at the local level, it is very rewarding because you can, like this deal with the tiny homes. This is something that's kind of been percolating in my mind for a little while. But then, like I said, the folks from D.R. Horton came and they had an idea. I was like, that fits perfect. And the next thing you know, that was only a couple months ago. And we're going to get this thing done. And to think that from the inception of the idea to actually completing it is like 18 months in government, that's warp speed.
Yeah.
I think Spence and I really resonate with a lot of the things you're saying because you sound like an entrepreneur as you talk. You really sound like a small business owner that has to be scrappy and figure out resources and work balance and all of these things. And so I wonder, is entrepreneurship small business? Tell me what you're doing about that in Knox County, because Knox County is exploding. You're getting a ton of people. You have the biggest university in the state. So what are you doing for these small businesses?
It was funny. I was I was traveling a couple weekends ago, and I ran into a person that knew me, and they were in the tech industry, and they said, "There's all this cool stuff happening in tech, and and you've done a great job. What have you done?" I'm like, "We just tried to make a welcoming environment for tech entrepreneurs," and so much of it is just that. It's just allowing businesses to do business. One of the most important things government can do is stay out of the way. Keep taxes low, keep regulations sensible and to a minimum, and celebrate businesses as well. I think it's wild. You think there are some politicians nowadays who literally are in opposition to business. Like you see, AOC ran Amazon out of her district in New York. That's something that I cannot relate to whatsoever. I don't create any jobs. Drives me nuts when politicians say, "Oh, we created these jobs." I didn't create any jobs. The businesses, the private sector created the jobs. Now, hopefully we have an environment which nurtures that and allows them to do that and encourages them to do that. But I don't actually create it. And I see that's just something that is really really bothers me nowadays. When I was a kid, I looked up to business people. I didn't see them as, these greedy, folks that take a shortcut to everything that they have. And that's not the case. Most people that are successful in the business work very hard, and you don't see everything that they've put into their journey. You just see the snapshot at the end. A while back, I'd posted on X about Elon Musk versus Bernie Sanders and AOC. Okay, this was when all the Tesla protests were going on. Meanwhile, you have Bernie and AOC. Sorry if I'm getting too political for your podcast, but meanwhile, you have, because this is important for entrepreneurs to see, you have Bernie and AOC out there basically, big business bad, it's all government. Let me ask a question. What has Bernie Sanders done in his entire life to improve the state of humanity as compared to what Elon Musk does? Elon Musk transformed commerce with PayPal, communication with X. I never thought I'd get a Cybertruck, but I got a Cybertruck because it's the coolest vehicle ever. He's transforming transportation. He has Starlink, which is the internet and how we access that. It's not going to be through fiber and landline. At some point, it's going to be satellite, especially for rural areas. And then he builds rocket ships. All Bernie Sanders has ever done is just foment class envy and perpetuate an environment of victimhood and helplessness. So if you're going to ask me, who are the actual people that make a difference in society, it's entrepreneurs. We should support them as government officials. We should also celebrate them. And it's a pretty simple formula, really, I think.
Entrepreneurship is so special in that entrepreneurs never forget where they came from. And it's one of the most powerful forces for change, economic change, that I've ever seen, because all you have to do is get it right on one of them. And then they come back to the community, they create
That's
jobs,
right. That's exactly
they build
right.
businesses, and more than 50% of all jobs in the United States are from small business owners. And when you look at Tennessee, it's even more concentrated that way. And so to know Tennessee is to recognize that Tennessee as a whole is one of the top 5 states to start a small business. Entrepreneurship is alive and well all throughout the state, and even seeing the stuff that UT is doing out related to entrepreneurship and all that they're investing out there is really fun, and our universities across the state. It just is a great message that I think entrepreneurs have had to thrive in a lot of different environments over the last 15 years. I mean, different political environments, economic environments, global plagues. I mean, all of it. It's amazing the resiliency that has been shown in that way. And I think you offer a really good framework to say that it is creating an environment to succeed. Entrepreneurs usually are like, hey, if you just give me a little bit,
right,
I'll do the rest.
Right.
Just don't hurt me in some ways.
Right.
And if you can help me a little bit, that's great too. Eric Jacobs, we wrap up each podcast with 3 short fill-in-the-blank sentences, okay? All right. So the biggest misconception people have about local government is blank.
The biggest misconception that people have about local government is that it's not important.
That's a great answer. And it really hits home in the voter turnout. Like, these are really people that are influencing your life up close and personal.
Yes, absolutely. And folks, and you can see it. I mean, just compare different cities around the country, even around the state of Tennessee. And the reason is, people are different in different areas, obviously. But the reason is, in many cases, is because of policies of local government.
Mm-hmm. The best thing that we can do to prepare young people for success is blank.
The best thing that we can do to prepare young people for success is to encourage them to follow their dreams while also realizing that they have to be able to pay the bills along the way. but encouraging people to be entrepreneurial in their thinking, whatever that may be, even if it's not necessarily an entrepreneurial endeavor. It's just to think outside the box and how can you make this happen?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and not no.
Right, exactly. Yes, exactly. Yes.
All right, number 3. One value I try to bring to every decision I make is blank.
One value that I try to bring to every decision I make is consistency with my principles and applying my underlying, if it's a political decision, applying my underlying political philosophy to that decision. Obviously, if it's a personal decision, my personal values to that.
Mm-hmm. Mayor Jacobs, I've really spent a long time looking forward to having you as a guest today. I love your story and how much life you have lived, how many different perspectives that you bring, but also you really have not forgotten where you came from. I'm really thankful that our state has had your leadership here. And it's a shame that you have to go and it's term limited, but for the difference that you have made in Knox County, which has been a lot, hopefully you drive up and down those roads and are able to point at a lot of things that you can say, you know what, I had a little bit of a hand in why that's sitting there today.
Well, thank you very much. When we started, you all said that the vision of this show is to basically illustrate what makes Tennessee great. And to me, it is our people. Mm-hmm. But then also you have to have people in elected office that will allow that greatness to shine through. And I think that's the key. And I think that we do that right here in Tennessee.
Mm.
Preach.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Mayor Glenn Jacobs from Knox County, Tennessee. Distinct from Knoxville, as we've learned a little bit of
not to be confused with
politics and arcane pieces. This really featured a lot of what I love in our podcast, which is equal parts educational as it is funny, but also revealing about the person. He sees that he can make the most impact in the time that he has, which, as he pointed out, he starts from day one with urgency because there is a 100% exit rate as mayor.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is as you and I have traveled the state, as we've traveled the country in the last couple of years, we've gotten to know a lot of political officials at all different levels of government. And I understand why politicians are the butt of so many jokes. And some people do deserve that. I'm not going to say that, it's not to a one, but I will stand on the hill. I will die on the hill saying I have met more people that have improved my faith and my hope in humanity. And it is the local politicians. It's not that we don't have some great people on the federal level, but it's people like Mayor Jacobs, people that, he wasn't going to say this, but it's like so much of his day is completely thankless. Mm-hmm. In the mayor's office, you're going to get every complaint, every pothole, everything that people hate. And he is keeping the vision of, I want to build tiny homes for veterans. Yeah. I want to create training so that kids can leave high school with a trade and make good money and not be in debt. I mean, I really appreciate getting to meet and highlight people that don't deserve to be the butt of the joke because there's a lot more of them than people think.
Mm-hmm. He continues to bring to life, too, all that's going on in and around Knoxville, and talked about the big Southwest Airlines news and talked about all the job creation and the economic opportunity. And I think he really hit on something that's important for Knoxville's future is that they are training a lot of people with various trade skills. But if there are not job opportunities there, all that they're doing is they're just a feeder community for other places where the jobs are, right. Which, is not the worst thing that could happen, but it's also, you want to be able to give lots of reasons to stay. And he started to highlight some of the major economic investments that are happening in that part of the state and even further east where that's needed. There's a lot of people that will work hard and they will develop skills when given the opportunity, but there has to be the corresponding economic opportunity for them to be able to go into a place to provide for their family. And so I could see the different pieces that, it's kind of like, I don't know, squeezing a tube is that you got to have it at the right balance on each end and not go too far out of bounds. And I could definitely see intentionality behind what he's doing out there.
Yeah, there's a quote that was ringing behind my ears the entire time we were talking, which is a John Maxwell quote you and I say a lot, which is, a leader must give up to go up. And it's something we're trying to teach our kids right now, too, is, it sounds shiny to be in charge of all the people, but really all that means is you have a huge customer service job. The higher you get, whether it be in your school council, whether it be in your job as a CEO or a manager or in politics, it's like you have to give up of your personal comfort to serve the people that are working alongside you. And I've seen him do that firsthand. You and I both have. And I just think it's a good reminder that, he has no ego amigo. And he's willing to talk about his days of blowing out his knee and thinking his dreams are shattered to being in the WWE and being in entertainment, being a villain of all things, which I love a villain character. It's just the best. You always want to be the villain. And then to serve in what I would say is often a thankless, hard job. I mean, when we travel, he is always everywhere. And he's traveling even when we're not. And so I really appreciated the perspective, and I hope people take from it the power of local leadership.